Epic Originals presents Bark Park, The Cone of Shame. Written by Brandy Doherty. Illustrated by Paige Pooler. Performed by Emily Lawrence. Scout walked in the gate of Bark Park and looked around. She was early. Only Gus and Walter were there. Walter liked to tease other dogs and always had a trick up his paw. Rumor had it that he lived in the house behind the park, but no one ever saw his human or knew exactly where he'd come from. He just sort of appeared each day. As Scout watched Walter chewing on an old rope toy, she wondered if maybe today was the day to crack the mystery of where Walter came from. But something else caught her eye. It was Rocky. Walter stopped chewing and watched Rocky too. The sight made him howl with laughter. Rocky was a very large dog, but he didn't usually have trouble getting into the park. However, today something was hanging around his neck, and whatever it was kept getting caught on the edge of the gate, pushing Rocky backward when he tried to move forward. Gus lifted his jowls from the dirt and squinted at the gate.
"What is Rocky wearing?"
Walter rolled sideways in the dirt, laughing.
"A cone of shame! He's wearing a cone of shame!"
Scout frowned. "Walter, don't be mean." With some help from his human, Rocky finally made it into the park, head drooping with embarrassment. But then, the bottom edge of the cone caught on a mound of dirt, and he tipped forward. Rocky fell face first onto the ground, and his tail flipped in the air. Maggie bounced into the park. "Rocky, are you okay?" She shifted from paw to paw. Scout walked over and dug away some of the dirt in front of the cone so Rocky could sit up.
I think so,"
Rocky said. He scratched at the gauze tie keeping the cone firmly around his neck. "Why are you wearing that?" Scout asked. Rocky shook his head.
"I'm not sure. My paw has been bothering me a little, but my head is fine. When I woke up this morning, the cone was already on."
Scout mumbled. A mystery. She walked in a tight circle around Rocky, examining the plastic cone from every angle as the big dog scratched at it. It didn't look like it was going anywhere.
"I just want it off,"
Rocky groaned.
"I keep running into things, and I can't even get a drink of water."
Walter came over to the group.
"I might know a guy."
Rocky squinted at him.
"A guy?"
he asked.
"Well, a dog,"
Walter said.
"In the alley."
He motioned toward the back alley with his nose.
"He can help get that thing off."
Rocky backed up a step, stumbling over his own paws and landing on his butt.
"I don't know,"
he said.
"I've never been to the alley before."
"You'll probably disappear and never come back," Sprinkles was frowning.
"And then we'll have to look for you, and I won't get my morning nap."
"Why are you always so grumpy, Sprinkles?" Maggie asked.
"You'd be grumpy too, if you were kept up every night listening to the wails of a tiny human,"
Sprinkles mumbled. Rocky paced around until his cone hit the bench, pushing him backward.
"Is it the only way?"
he asked Walter. Walter nodded.
"Unless anyone else has a better idea."
No one spoke up. Even though they wanted to help Rocky, none of them knew how to wriggle out of a cone of shame. Rocky gave a long sigh.
Okay. Fine. I'll go if you're sure it's safe.
Walter led the way to the back fence as Rocky, Maggie, Sprinkles, and Scout followed. Scout glanced at the humans, but they were engaged in a lively debate about where to put a new water fountain. She just hoped her human would wait to put out her blueberries. Otherwise, Tippy the squirrel might steal them all. Walter led them to a section of fence where the boards were loose. He pushed the boards aside, and Rocky backed out through the opening so his cone wouldn't get caught. The other dogs followed. The alley was fully in the shade. It felt a lot colder and darker than the dog park. There were some empty boxes and big dumpsters. Judy, the local stray cat, sat on top of one of the dumpsters, licking a mostly empty tuna can. A large brown and black dog with a thick tail walked out from behind a stack of boxes.
Hi, Bones.
Walter stepped forward and spoke in a hushed whisper. The two dogs looked back at Rocky. Rocky's eyes darted nervously to Scout, who gave Rocky an encouraging smile. Bones stood in front of Rocky.
What's the cone for? I'm not sure,
Rocky said.
My human was on the phone with the vet yesterday, and my paw has been a little itchy. But I don't know what that could have to do with this thing. Huh. Well, this is how it's going to happen,
Bones said.
When I step on the top of the cone, you pull your head back. Hard.
Scout's big ears twitched. She knew this plan wasn't going to work. The gauze was tied too tight. But before she could tell Rocky, he had lowered his head to the pavement. Bones placed his two front paws on the plastic cone. Rocky put all of his weight on his back legs and pulled. The cone pushed against his ears. All the skin and fur on his face smushed forward, covering his eyes. He pulled and tugged and tugged and pulled, but nothing happened.
Huh,
Bones said.
I thought for sure that would work.
He took his paws off the cone, and Rocky flew backward, knocking over a tower of boxes. Rocky hung his head and shuffled back toward the dog park.
I'm going to be stuck in this thing forever,
he moaned. No way! We'll figure out how to get that cone off, Rocky, Scout said. Scout, Maggie, and Sprinkles followed Rocky, while Walter stayed behind with Bones. Once they were back in Bark Park, Scout walked around Rocky again, studying the cone. Oh, I get it now, she said, as she traced the loops of gauze around the plastic cone. The gauze ended in a pretty little bow. Scout nodded to herself. I think I know how to get it off. You do? The other three dogs barked together. Scout nodded. Then she hiccuped. Excuse me. Yes, I do, she said. Lie down, Rocky. Rocky flattened to the dirt. Scout dragged over an empty water bowl and tipped it upside down. When she stood on it, she was just able to reach Rocky's neck. She put her front paws on his shoulder and nudged the gauze tie with her nose until she found the end. Then she grabbed the end in her teeth, stepped off the bowl, and walked slowly backward until the tie came loose. Rocky gave his head a quick jerk, and the cone fell right off.
I'm free! I'm free!
Rocky barked. He ran in a circle, shaking his head and enjoying how it felt to flap his ears around again. He headed right over to the water fountain and got a long drink from the bowl underneath. Then he started running in circles again. Scout and the other dogs watched Rocky's dance of freedom, but it stopped just as quickly as it had started. Before anyone knew what was happening, Rocky plopped down in the dirt and started furiously licking his paw.
Rocky, what are you doing?
Sprinkles asked.
My paw is so itchy,
he said between licks and nipping bites. Scout narrowed her eyes and walked over to inspect Rocky's paw. There was a big sore patch right between his toes. Oh, I see. No wonder you were wearing the cone of shame, Rocky. You have a sore on your paw.
Maybe that's why my human was on the phone with the vet. She was worried about my paw.
Just then, Rocky's human walked up and slid the cone right back over his head. No licking, she said, tying it tight. Well, Scout shook her head. Mystery solved. Why do dogs wear cones? In The Cone of Shame, poor Rocky comes to the dog park wearing a cone on his head. Cones like these are very common, so maybe you've seen one. While they can make pets feel uncomfortable, they prevent them from scratching or licking an injured part of their body. Once the injury heals, the owner or veterinarian removes the cone. Cones can be made of plastic or fabric, and with a little practice, most animals can still eat and drink while wearing them. It can be strange to see an animal wearing a cone, but think of it like a special bandage. And the best part, when the cone comes off, it means the pet is healthy.